This week, authorities announcing new measures that would ban teens on Rikers Island from being put in solitary confinement. The rule expected to go into effect after the end of the year. This comes after a series of reports on brutality the teen inmates suffered at the facility, a lot of times at the hands of the correction officers. Federal report released by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan back in August cited, and I'm quoting here, a deep-seated culture of violence against teen inmates, and found the violence to be excessive and inappropriate. We've done a whole lot on this subject here, talked to a lot of the principals involved at Rikers. But there was a news story that caught our attention this week in the New Yorker, which reported the story of a 17-year-old, Khalif Browder, who was accused of stealing a backpack. The charges, turns out, were later dropped. But Browder spent, I want you to listen carefully, 3 years at Rikers without a trial, all due to delays at the prosecutor's office and in the Bronx criminal court system. Now, we spoke with Browder's defense attorney, Paul Priesta, earlier this week.
They completely circumvented the speedy trial laws. This is something that happens in every courtroom in this city every day, where the district attorney's office states they're not ready today, but they can be ready in a week. And yet the judge will put the case over for a month. In the summer, maybe it's 2 months.
All right, let me get into this. And Jimmy and May, I want you guys to jump in on this. I mean, you got a lot of former prosecutors here, and now your defense attorneys. I know the Bronx is notorious for having a backlog of cases, but that said, Jimmy, 3 years. I mean, I spoke to the guy off camera. He said, I never thought this thing was, they came to me, the case says it can't be. 3 years, and you can't see the inside of a courtroom. The kid was offered misdemeanors just to take a plea to get out, and he wouldn't do it because he didn't do it. But I mean, from all accounts, he tried to kill himself inside, tried to kill himself since he's been outside, and again, solitary confinement for more than half the time that he was there. I mean, this is New York. It's not, you know, the third world. What's going on here?
Well, with this, this exemplifies the many, many problems that we have from not only the court system, but the facility in which he's confined. What prosecutors do, it's true. They'll come into court and say we're not ready. They'll get a long adjournment, but they'll file what's called a certificate of readiness within 3 or 4 days. The clock stops, so they take advantage of the speedy trial statute. And a kid who can't make even minimal bail remains incarcerated until somehow somebody wakes up. All the time, all the time. And then to be at Rikers Island at his young age, which has now been exposed as an island unto itself without any kind of supervision, without any kind of true regulation, and he's getting abused and beat up by guards. So it's just a bad example of what's wrong.
I learned what Jimmy was talking about, how the clock works. You're supposed to get a court date in 6 months, okay? But this, forgot the clock, okay, where you get this delay, a day delay can be up to 6 weeks in this alternate universe. One time, and they showed all the different adjournments for this thing. One time he had a date and they couldn't do it because the prosecutor, the ADA, was on vacation. Now, I would hope if I get a speeding ticket, they don't show up to it, I can get the thing dismissed. At what point does the Sixth Amendment actually become the Sixth Amendment? Well, I'm not saying take it easy on these guys, but at least get them in the system, get the thing processed.
Well, first of all, with kids, it makes you revisit the entire raise the age movement to make New York no longer be one of the 2 states that remain that treat kids as adults for the purpose of the criminal justice system. Secondly, you look at the fact that this young man is charged with taking a backpack, which would have been a misdemeanor, petty larceny. At his age, he would have been, in all likelihood, a mandatory youthful offender. Okay. The most jail time he could have served was 6 months. So at some point, there should have been an application to the appellate division to say, look, this guy served 3 times more than that, 6 times the jail sentence that a judge could even impose. He should have been out during that pending period of time. The other thing is, I'm sure the bail was a low bail, but what we sometimes miss is that if you are not an affluent person, if you have no money, $25 bail is a remand. You're going to sit there.
I did a whole series on this.
$3,000 could be $1 million.
But here's the question.
Don't just blame the prosecutors for this.
No.
You know, the New York Speedy Trial Statute is different from the Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial, and it's actually much more favorable to defendants than the Sixth Amendment, but it's an arcane, old, complicated statute. Most of these people whose trials are being delayed are represented by appointed 18B lawyers who are systemically underfunded. It falls to the defense lawyer to hold the prosecutor's
you're going to
feet
get
to
me to the next one that I got for you, Mark. But here's what I don't get, though. At a certain thing, the district attorney's job is to carry out justice, okay? how many adjournments can you do? They didn't ask for any extensions in this case of the defense.
But Rich, it's
At
not
what
just-
point does the prosecutor say, hey, time out. I've done 14 adjournments
Well,
to
where's
the
the
kid.
judge? Where's the defense lawyer? This
Why
is just a
isn't somebody-
prosecutor
where is
ruling the
this
roost
kid's
here.
attorney? Why isn't he yelling or she yelling and screaming?
But they're
Absolutely.
systemically underfunded. They can't do the job. Some of them are competent, some of them aren't competent. And it's not like a federal court where the case goes to one judge and stays with one judge. Each different appearance could be with a different
Well,
judge.
for
I'm
time
sorry.
purposes, guys, I got a solution that you guys, I'm sure, are going to tell me is idiotic or not fair.
No, it probably will make sense. The law won't.
Well, no, this one is a little bit out there because this one applies not just to Rikers, but you've probably seen the migrant kids, the tens of thousands of migrant kids in this. A lot of them are facing deportation when they still haven't gotten their trial because there's such a shortage of attorneys. I know they put in a little more than $4 million from DHS to try and do this. But that said, I know, well, you guys know better than I, young attorneys getting out of grad school, getting out of law school, even passing the bar, they're having trouble getting work. To help them pay off the burden of all these student loans, is there any logic that they could be counsel to an attorney or help out with the backlog here in these cases that at least move some of the paperwork forward? If I said it was kind of like not a national service, but if you get out of law school, I don't care if it's Harvard or if it's the other end of it, that you should do some pro bono work. I'm not saying completely on the arm, they'll take care of student loans or something else.
See, I disagree. I think that these violations that you're seeing, they're as big as anything to these people. You need seasoned attorneys, attorneys that have been around the block. We spend a lot of money in this country. We spend money on wars. We make priorities, and our justice system is the thing that we're most proud of in this country. If we have to spend more money on this justice system by funding good lawyers to protect people's rights, that's something we need to do.
Well, Richard, we're spending the money. We spent probably $300,000 for this young man to sit in Rikers. And if there's a lawsuit based upon an assault, we're going to spend that much more. So the money's being spent. It's not
Oh,
a
there
question.
is a lawsuit,
and that,
by the way,
And
but
that money,
he's just
there's
turned
never a
35.
question about whether we can spend the money to keep a kid in jail for 3 years on when the most you can get
But I
is 6
think law
months.
schools are going in this
There is a
direction.
proposal by
And-
Judge
and-
Lippman.
It's approved. They have.
Yeah.
Judge
And there are a lot
Lippman-
of clinical programs now developing in all the law schools to provide this
But when
kind of
you-
but you do-
representation with skilled counsel supervising these young
Absolutely,
lawyers.
and
That's
you
very
don't
important.
go. You don't have to go to school. It's 6 months of law school that is taken off. So you're only going for 2.5 years. The last 6 months, you have to do pro bono
It's
work.
I
required.
under
agree with
supervision
Doug,
of
though,
counsel.
because you want somebody who's seasoned. It's one thing to work on a small civil case. When you're dealing with someone's liberty, you don't need a law student learning how to do it while this kid could still sit there for 3 years. But this time, except you'd say, well, the person's just learning. I think that at the end of the day, also, if you have that seasoned attorney, you don't need that
But
attorney,
Mayor,
the young attorney.
You got legal aid attorneys who they get out of school, they go to legal aid, they're under the supervision of legal aid. This is the cases that they're getting.
We're going
lot
to
of
keep
them-
this conversation going, but after the break, I'm going to ask Doug if, and he's been in some of these cases, with what Walmart's doing to Mr. Morgan here, if it's smart on their part or they're going to regret ever fighting this guy from getting the civil case that he's got against him. We'll be right back with that.